So you said I'm the most famous person you talked to.
Yeah, I mean, I typically I'm just talking to a camera, and now I get to talk to the guy
A
that's the
person.
most connected guy I know. I've got to
Well,
ask you
it's
a
nice.
question right off the bat, a cardio
Got it.
miracle question.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So I have a pickup truck that I it'll sit for weeks and I'll never use it, and then occasionally I'll get in it. Well, I was kind of going through some like a storage part
And you,
of the truck
and you found stick
underneath the
packs,
center
stick,
console that I've
stick.
hardly looked in months and months and months and months, maybe even longer. And I found this big bottle that you could get at probably Costco of anti-acid, like Tums type stuff.
Oh, huh.
Because I used to live on those. So bad for you, but I'd always have heartburn. Since I started drinking Cardio Miracle, I kind of forgot that that's been one of the, like, I don't know if I can tie it to Cardio Miracle, but that seems to be the common denominator. I was wondering, and
You can.
I had that listed because I knew I was going to be talking to you. Is there something connected with heartburn and Cardio Miracle? I mean, getting rid of it?
I've I've heard that many times, and you said two very very important things. One, you said you had forgotten about that, and
Yeah.
one of the things that I have to say to your people who are taking Cardio Miracle, and some of them perhaps took it and have stopped taking it for whatever reason. Um, they often forget how bad they used to feel, and they forget all of the different maladies that they had, like frozen shoulder or arthritic fingers or acid reflux or stomach disorders or constipation or whatever. And the reality is nitric oxide with therapeutic vitamin D3 delivery heals microcapillaries. And part of the problem that happens when we eat poorly, which I eat worse probably than you, but I've never had a problem with antacids or Tums or those types of things. But that means that your stomach acid is more uh, potent and moving, and that plus the inflamed capillaries in your lower tract causes the discomfort of everything. The extreme end of that is Crohn's disease,
Oh,
and
yeah.
some people get to a point they have Crohn's. They also have irritable bowel syndrome, and those are just extreme levels, essentially, of what you had with an acidic stomach, which sometimes comes up, and people have more of an acid reflex response. Other people just feel discomfort down there, and so they throw in the calcium and the things that are in the Tums or in the antacids to help neutralize the stomach acid plus the acidic nature of the things perhaps you've eaten, or the fact that all of those capillaries have had too much acid for too long, and so they're irritated, and then that causes the problem. So the stomach is one thing, and then once it gets down to the colon and the intestines, it becomes a different thing. That's where diverticulitis comes in, and people go in and have to take out sections of their colon or out of their intestines because the capillaries in the walls of those very vital organs have been so inflamed and compromised by stress creates inflammation. Acid foods create inflammation. Medications cause, strangely enough, medications help symptoms of disease, but it ends up causing more inflammation because they're synthetic ingredients that are essentially, it's kind of like smothering the fire with something that's still flammable. That it may slow the fire down, but it actually still going to burn longer if you end up trying to smother it with the wrong type of material. Maybe that's a bad example, but it's kind of like, I don't know. It's um, maybe, and maybe this is too crude of an example that you'll have to edit, but it's like a kind of the joke that says it's like it's like wetting the bed. It gives you temporary relief, but eventually you have to change the sheets. So, so, so
I love it.
maybe that's part
That
of
kind
what
of
happens.
comment's perfect for this channel. That kind of comment's perfect for this show.
Well, we got a lot to
Well,
talk about because we are in perilous times, brother.
okay, so I've never seen more division amongst people that are like-minded. You know, like you can bring up the Epstein stuff, you can bring up Israel stuff, you can bring up
The big, beautiful
uh,
bill,
the big
deficit
beautiful bill.
spending. Yeah.
It it just goes on and on and on. And I tell you, it's like walking on eggshells wherever you go to get to have a conversation. People that you would normally feel like, oh, I can totally have a great conversation about something. It's not so much you could do that anymore because there's a house divided right now. What say you, John?
Polarized. We're polarized. And
Yeah.
I would assign it to the father of all lies,
Mm.
because the reality is, what does the adversary strive mostly to do? To divide
Right.
the people. And so we're being divided by minor issues that are major to people. It's sort of like we're getting caught up in the thick of thin things. So let me elaborate on that, because I love this, because I love talking about it with you. But let's talk about Epstein for a minute. I've kind of followed it peripherally. I don't, it's so disgusting. I haven't really spent a lot of time on it, but I've heard all the rumors. I've seen all the stories of all the people that are involved potentially. Everyone from Alan Dershowitz to Judge Roberts to Bill Clinton to maybe Donald Trump to whomever. But Tom Hanks, all of the movie stars. It is so pervasive. It's such a big thing. And yet I was last night with Janet. We were listening to Tucker Carlson on the way back from being out, and Tucker attacked. And I would recommend Tucker's interview. If you go to him, I think yesterday or day before, it was a full hour talk that he gave. I think he gave it with Charlie Kirk. It was at a Charlie Kirk rally or meeting, and he just went on and on and on. And I just cannot say how much I admire him, because he's like a singular voice out there that is just saying, "Hey, just tell us the truth. We just want the truth. We're grown-ups, we're citizens. We want the truth. We don't care where it comes down. We don't care what happens." So I had an epiphany this morning about it, because according to what it looks like now, instead of the fact that Trump was maybe personally involved, or maybe that it's just too big of a deal because all the billionaires, all the important people that people idolize, or the movers and shakers, are all guilty of this pedophilia, whatever, or this sexual misbehavior. I think he's really come onto it, the fact that I think now myself that Epstein was a part of the Israeli CIA, called whatever
The
it is,
Mossad. The
the
Mossad.
Mossad,
Yeah.
that he was an instrument of that, because, as Tucker said, he was a junior high math teacher, for heaven's sakes. I mean, and all of a sudden he becomes like one of the richest people in the world. I mean, that's pretty crazy. That's a huge transformation. I think of my junior high math teachers becoming Epstein, and that would be pretty crazy, because I had two of the worst math teachers in junior high they had bad breath. They had dandruff all over their shoulders. They were in their 60s at the time. They looked like they were 90. And we all cheated like dogs, and none of us learned anything in advanced algebra and geometry, because they were so out of it. We passed the roll around and filled out our own grade. And so, but just like wetting the bed, the next year in high school, when I got trigonometry, I didn't have a clue, because for 2 years I had these terrible teachers. So enough about teachers, but I think Epstein perhaps was in cahoots, or was on the payroll, or was involved in that. And that was their effort, was to get the goods, blackmail people to control them. And the best way to control them is through their appetites, according to, you think of the temple, you think of the beginning of time, you think of Cain and Abel, you think of all of you think of David, the king, David, the most beloved. Uh, Sexual and addictive types of sins seem to be the most prevalent that most people can be subject to. Go back, pornography, alcoholism, drug use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So addiction and the body, this mortal body that we all wanted to have when we came here to earth, seems to be the subject of some of our greatest temptations, if not the greatest temptation. So I think Epstein was a part of that, and that Trump got essentially heard the inside thing from Netanyahu and basically said, "Hey, man, this is it's going to destroy our relationship with the United States, our credibility. If we were funding Epstein, that's taking down all these people, all of the politicians, all of the billionaires, all the movie stars, all the everything." I think the insider side of the U.S.-Israel relationship came into play there, and I think the corruption is so deep and the Gadiantons are so prominent that I think Bongino and Patel and Bondi, I think they've been personally threatened, that their lives are in danger and their families are in danger if they release this, because the people are so powerful. And so I think that that's why Trump, all these people went from, we're going to release it, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then all of a sudden they shift. And so all of the loyal MAGAites are saying, what the crap? These people are weaseling out. They're just like the past people. And just like now, so that's my opinion, that I think that now, as I sift through all of the minutia, I think that Epstein was working in cahoots with the Mossad, and I think that compromises that. But my response to that is it started in 2007. Now, I'm not saying what some people say, well, that's long ago, who cares? We should care. It's corruption, it's terrible, it's sinful, it's murder, it's whatever, it's bad. But at the same time, think of how corrupt our CIA has been. Think about the fact that they've now been directly almost proven to any normal observer that they were the ones who assassinated John F. Kennedy, for heaven's sakes. Our own CIA was involved in that murder of a sitting president. So, we can be upset that the Israeli CIA is corrupt, but our own CIA is corrupt. So it just means that we're going to expose the corruption of the Israeli side of it, which was in cahoots with our own CIA, probably in many ways. And so it undermines one of the basic fabrics of our entire country. And so it's like the slipperiest slope ever. And I think Trump either is protecting himself, which is possible. It's not. I think he was a sexual person, and certainly had plenty of affairs and things like that. As did Kennedy, as did George Bush Sr. All of these people have had through the years. Most of the leaders of countries and kings and queens, and everyone's always had morality problems. So we shouldn't be surprised by that or shocked, because it's always been the case. Does that mean it's right? Heavens no. But if that's the case, I think Trump's trying to navigate it without the whole Israeli thing blowing up with public support and all the problems that we're having with that. And so that's why I think, but I genuinely think that these lieutenants, cabinet members, I think they may be in fear of their own lives. And so that's why they've backed off their rhetoric that was pre-election, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate it out. And Pam Bondi's, twisting in the wind. I mean, Glenn Beck's calling for her resignation and everything else, and I don't know enough about Pam Bondi. I was shocked, really, that Patel and Bongino, particularly, all of a sudden are saying, well, there was nothing there. Like, what? What are you talking about? How can Maxwell, his gal, be sentenced to 20 years for children pedophilia, slavery, or whatever it was, if there was nothing that happened? Then that shows a miscarriage of justice. So it's extremely inconsistent. It's Gadianton-like. It's divisive, and it's probably just a great. It's almost like Luciferian pulling out their last card in a poker game to try to do everything possible to slow down the Make America Great train and all the amazing things that have happened. I mean, think about the border being shut down in 6 months. I mean, shut
Right.
down. And yet people say, well, yeah, but the budget. Well, guess what? We caused ourselves, we spent hundreds of billions, if not more, letting all the people in, giving them hotel rooms, giving them cell phones, giving them food, giving them health insurance. We've crowded our emergency rooms all over the country. And now we got to spend billions to move them out, the criminals, et cetera. That's going to be a budgetary hardship. It's going to hit us with a deficit. So you've got to sometimes spend more to get to another place. And that's why I didn't like, you know, Massey, Congressman Massey and Rand Paul and others saying, well, we need more cuts in the, no, we have this problem we're dealing with. And the only way we can do is spend our way out while we're building the economy back and let the economy help us grow out of this problem. It's very complicated economically and politically. That's a long answer, but that's the sum of my politics today aspect, at least for starters.
Well, I've done a few videos on it, and I have a couple of slightly different takes. Just the fact that I just wanted to add this. Jeffrey Epstein, I believe he was used and a Mossad operative, but the real story is that people succumb to what he offered them.
And they're at fault, and they need to step up and take accountability. No
Yeah.
question about that. That's why I say release it, let the chips
Yes.
fall where they may.
Yes.
No, absolutely. I'm not saying. All I'm saying
No,
is
no,
that
I know
think,
you're not. I
I
know you're
think
not.
Trump is trying to figure out the complexity and the
Yeah.
ramifications, just like in bombing Iran. I understand what Tucker says. Why are we bombing Iran? Well, we're bombing Iran whether we believe or not. I mean, why else are you doing testing under 100 yards worth of cement or whatever? I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
I mean, any common sense there. So I was in favor of that strategic preventative thing, just like
Yeah.
I think other things are preventative. But, I can't even fathom what Donald Trump is trying to navigate. I can't even fathom what he deals with every day. And as you notice, he needs Cardio Miracle. I've got to try to get it to him because I'm telling you, you can see that he's getting worn down. Finally.
Yes.
I mean, he's walking slower. And he should be. My gosh, he lives at a pace and an energy that I've never seen in my lifetime of anyone in that
for
position.
sure.
So
I think the other problem that Trump has to deal with is there's people that are associated with Epstein that have done nothing wrong, but there's a photo or there's a phone call or there's a flight or something.
they're on the flight, sure.
And you can't just go boom. This would destroy people that really have they didn't do anything. They just happened to be at a party or something. So
let me give you a personal example that you may relate to and find interesting.
Perfect.
I had probably one of my dearest friends, if not my dearest friend, once said to me, and I can use the names because the people have died since they're passed away, and he has died, my friend, who I love dearly. And one day he said to me when we were talking about some business things, he says, John, I don't know that I can do these things with you because you hang out with people that I think are crooks. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, you're friends with Gary Sheets. And I said, yeah, I'm friends with Gary Sheets. I've known Gary for years. Gary's been like a big brother to me. He's been generous to me, tried to hire me for many years. And a lot of people maybe not know, but Gary Sheets was the one whose wife was murdered by Mark Hoffman. And
That's right.
Gary Sheets in the 70s was considered one of the 5 most prominent men in Salt Lake City. And he was involved in funding and starting the Children's Miracle Network, helping to save the Utah Jazz, had one of the largest real estate development businesses. And when they passed the banking law changing credit unions' reserve categories to savings and loans in 1986. All of the savings and loans and credit unions went broke. And because of that, the real estate market crashed. And because of that, Gary was in the middle of all that, had a lot of, but he lost a couple $100 million empire because of a change in a banking law and the reserves. Now, am I saying he's a perfect person? Absolutely not. He was a businessman. He was aggressive. He was a salesman like me, and but he always, even though he tried to hire me multiple times, I said, Gary, I'm just not into securities and investing people's money and all that kind of stuff. And but we were dear friends. And when he was accused of fraud, he was accused by our government of 35 federal counts, 35 of racketeering, money laundering, you name it. And the person he helped start the Children's Miracle Network, and this is maybe getting too much into people's personal, was Marie Osmond and her brothers, and they lost a couple 100,000 investing. They made hundreds of thousands, and they lost a couple hundred with Gary, from what I was told. And she actually testified against him in a trial, and and I, as just a friend. I mean, I wasn't a missionary buddy. I wasn't a fraternity buddy. I was just a guy who hung out with him at Utah Jazz events and Utah Jazz games. And we both shared our love of basketball. And his lawyers called me during the trial. The government spent 3 years and $5 million back when that was a lot of money, trying to convict him of one of these 30 or all of these 35 charges, federal felony charges. And he had 3 character witnesses. And I got a call and they said, would you be a character? I said, why would you call me? I said, I just knew Gary from basketball. I wasn't a business colleague. I wasn't this. He wasn't my neighbor. He says, well, we have a list of 100 people and we'll call you if we need you. Well, I remember exactly where I was on I-80 when I got the phone call from the lawyer, and he said, we need you to testify. He says, 95 people have turned us down because they don't want to get involved. They don't want to get involved. And I said, are you kidding me? Gary's hanging out. There was his life in the balance, and people who know him the best, whose sons he paid for their missions, who he helped them multiple times, one of the most generous people ever. And I said, and none of them will testify? I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. And the 3 people who testified were Wendell Ashton, Marvin Ashton's brother, who was the head of the Deseret News, the head of the Olympic Committee, and Randy Rigby, who worked for him as an assistant who ended up being the president of the Utah Jazz, and John Hewlett. And the bottom line is I ended up testifying. The guy advising the FBI of the lawyers was one of my sister's best friends, and who was one of my heroes. And after I testified, which I didn't know anything other than I said, here's all the good I know about Gary. I don't know any of this other stuff. And I was just a character witness of him. And after my session, my sister's friend came out to me and says, well, I don't agree with your opinion of Gary, but I respect you for coming and telling what you did. And I thought, oh, that's nice. He was acquitted, Scott, of every count, every single count. And yet when he was accused, all over the newspapers, Sheets is a swindler, Sheets is a crook, Sheets is this, Sheets is that. And then when he was acquitted by a jury without appeal, there was an article this big on the back page of the B section of the Deseret News saying Gary Sheets was exonerated after 3 years of being castigated. And yet, if you were to ask anyone our age if Gary Sheets was a crook, they would still say he was a crook because all they ever heard was that he was, tried and accused of all these crimes. So all I'm saying is I would be guilty. I mean, in the pursuit of my life, I could have been on Epstein's airplane. I never got invited. I never met him. I don't know him, but I would have probably gone for a plane ride.
Yeah.
I was invited by one of my golf buddies to go to the Bohemian Grove twice. I didn't even know what it was. When I learned a little bit about it, I said, I just kept my distance and didn't bring it up again. But I was invited and could have gone to that very unbelievable place with one of the key people. All the people in my golf club in Montana were members of the Bohemian Grove, and they liked me
Wow.
and they wanted to have me come. I never went, but the fact is but I was lockering next to guys who, Charles Schwab and Don Valentine, the head of Sequoia Capital, who funded Apple. I mean, the richest people I used to hang out with in my Montana golf club. But I never went to any of their parties or any of their stuff. But I have pictures with, some of them at the golf course from the member guest tournament. So everyone can, and the Savior associated with the sinners. They didn't like the fact that he associated with the Pharisees and that he even talked to them. And he went and, he was from Bethlehem and Mary Magdalene. And I mean, on and on and on. So, but I personally had one of my best friends say, it makes me a little uncomfortable because you happen to hang out with some wheeler dealers that some people think are crooks. Well, some people may think I'm a crook. I mean, whatever. I mean, what do you do? And so I understand what you're saying, but I think that there's a lot of people by association that could be accused or whatever, but we need to stop being so darn judgmental about everything and worry about ourselves trying to be a good example. And those of us who've made mistakes, we repent and move forward. We think that I mean, if the Savior's willing to forgive us, for heaven's sakes, we should forgive. Like he said, I, the Lord, will forgive whom I will forgive. But of you, it's required to forgive all men and women, even those maybe that you feel poorly done by. It's our responsibility to forgive them. And I think that's really an important principle.
Man, beautiful. I was just thinking of a time when I had a trucking company. I got an invitation from Les Schwab, not him exactly, but I ended up meeting him, but to get on a private jet in Salt Lake and fly to Oregon and go see Les Schwab and their tire plant. And I did it,
Well, of
and
course.
I think,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? And so these invitations come, and it was, anyway, I think that's one of the reasons why Trump is so hesitant. But we're promised in the scriptures that everything will be revealed. Everything will be revealed. Not that we should always just wait for that, but I'm hoping that there is a transparency on not only that, but just everything. And
everything.
I think here's how I feel about Trump with this. I would much rather have him. I trust him more than probably any president that it has been in my lifetime, and so I'm going to stick with him. I'm not going to get too frustrated at things that are out of my control. I'm not going to abandon ship. I just wish he would either say, you know what, I know what's in there, and I'm not going to share it because I just wish there was an explanation.
Don't just dismiss it as if it's not important or relevant.
Exactly.
I agree, and I think he'll get that. I think he's getting that message because that's where we've got to have voices like Tucker Carlson, and not that Tucker's perfect, he's not, but Tucker Carlson calling him out, because I was there with Tucker through all of those meetings and things where Tucker was campaigning all over the United States for the entire month of October for the president through those rallies. So I believe hearing those types of calls from Megyn Kelly and from Mark Halpern and some of the real key people, even Bill O'Reilly, all saying you need to come forth and not just dismiss it, because that's what we voted for him for, was more transparency in government. But he could say, we've got to navigate this carefully because there's a lot of things here at stake. But yes, the answer is we're gonna make it known, but we're working behind the scenes right now to figure out the best way to do it without throwing the whole world upside down,
and
or whatever.
I would be fine with an explanation like that versus,
I mean,
just move on. Don't worry about it. Anyway, okay, good. What else? What have you been have you been traveling? Have you been? I know another cardio miracle question I have. How often do you look at changing, or not necessarily changing, but just improving ingredients in cardio miracle? I know you added lion's mane,
and NAC, and we added glutathione in just over a little over about 18 months ago.
Yeah.
We've improved the formula 8 times in 12 years.
Really?
Oh
Eight
yeah,
times in 12 years.
yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. That's
That's why
awesome.
there's 58 ingredients. And, when I started, it was in the 40s. But I just can't help myself when I find something else that I think is valuable. Uh, and we haven't had a price increase in 6 or 7 years. And
Wow.
do you think prices have gone up? They've gone up substantially. But again, this is where people, and I wanted to mention that because people still occasionally say, oh, it's kind of pricey. And my comment is, compared to what? Compared to having dialysis? How about going blind? How about cancer? How about having open heart surgery? How about prescription medications? See, people say, well, I don't have to pay for my prescriptions. Well, somebody does. Taxpayers do. The fact that John Hewlett hasn't had a daily prescription medicine in 17 years since I've been on nitric oxide has saved the government lots and lots of money, and health insurance lots and lots of money. So there's
Yeah.
actual cost and there's perceived cost. So we've improved it. And but let me give people out there just an example who, if they care, if they would want to have it, put it in perspective. We now have 180 servings in one pouch. It's a big pouch, but it's kind of the value. It's like having a big canister of protein from Costco. The 180 serve, I think, is 223 plus free shipping uh, on our subscription. That comes out to less than $1.25 per serving. $1.25 per serving. Now, people say it's kind of pricey. Well, we do recommend 2 servings a day. So that's less than $2.50 a day. That's less than that's about $75 a month, $80 a month for full dosage. If you weigh 150 pounds and if you're not sick, you can take 1 dose a day and be fine. If you have high blood pressure, if you're 6 inches short for your weight, like I am, if you have a family history of heart disease, if you have had all kinds of stress, if you're not exercising, if you're not drinking green smoothies 3 times a day, then you maybe need to have 2 doses a day to offset your bad diet, your bad behavior, your stress, and all the things that downregulate your immune system. But you can take 1 serving, you could take 1/4 of a serving, and you'd be better than not taking any. So this idea that it's too expensive, I would submit, take a look at your budget. If you ever eat out for lunch, if you ever eat out for dinner, if you ever drink Diet Coke,
Yeah.
if you're ever eating packaged food, if you ever buy a pizza, compared to what? Cardio Miracle is the cost of 2 pizzas a month that you would order if you're eating pizza. It's the cost of you eating, 7 frozen meat pies that you bought on sale from some grocery store. I mean, it doesn't. Bottled water is more expensive. Bottled water, which has plastic in it that's going to help poison you and give you Alzheimer's and dementia, is more expensive. So when people say it's kind of pricey, I go, boy, it isn't for me. In fact, today I wanted to show you. I'm drinking. This is the Dave Balliff who works with us. It's his formula. He puts ice and he puts in heavy cream or half and half in his Cardio Miracle, and it tastes like a cherry creamsicle. And it's keto. It's totally keto, intermittent fasting approved. So if you want to add something, if you're on the keto diet, if you're on a high protein, low carb, low sugar diet, add some cream, heavy cream, or half and half, and it tastes amazing. If you want, add some fresh mangoes that you can buy for $1 each at your grocery store this time of year, fruit in season. You can add any kind of fruit, any kind of frozen fruit, banana, anything to your Cardio Miracle, and that actually helps uptake the nitric oxide through the sugar, the natural sugars of real fruit or vegetables. You can put an avocado in there. You can change the taste if you want. One of the things I do is I actually put in sparkling water. Think about it. I pay $6.99 on sale or $8.99 for an 8-pack of sparkling water, which is basically carbonated water in a can with a dash of natural flavoring. That's it. It has almost no flavor, has no sugar, has no value at all other than it's sparkling and makes it seem like a soft drink. So we're paying $1 for carbonated nothing, and you're adding it to Cardio Miracle, and it tastes like you've got a sparkling drink from Sodalicious that is now good for you, that replaces 90% of the supplements you should be taking. It can be a meal replacement, which even the people who are in the least income among us are at least spending a few dollars for every meal every day. It can replace a meal and give you better nutrition than 90% of what most people are eating on a daily basis. And I would like to put it out there, if anyone's still listening to this conversation that we're having, I'd like to put it out there that if you have a problem financial, now we all have problems financially, but if you have a significant, real, verifiable problem financially, and you have poor health, and you're not taking Cardio Miracle because it's too expensive, you send an email to support@cardiomiracle.com. Support@cardiomiracle.com with your name, your address, your email, your phone number, and what your hardship is. And I or a member of my team will personally contact you, discuss your situation, and make an adjustment that will fit your budget so that you can have it. And I may even ask former bishop, former stake president, former mission president Palmer to even get involved in helping us determine those in true need, uh, politely, respectively, and do that, because we want to help those who need that help. We know that people through divorce, through death, through disability, through circumstances beyond their own, cannot afford everything they would like. But perhaps we're willing to invest a little bit of time and energy and discounting our product to get you what you need, because we care about your life and your ability to function in a healthy way and not necessarily be dependent upon modern medicine, which in many cases might kill you. We're interested in your life being happy, mobile, successful, and less dependent on pharmaceuticals and unnecessary surgical intervention.
Man, who does
What do you
that?
think of that?
Who does that? That's amazing.
Well, we're going to do
Uh,
that, and we want to do that, and then we can move. The other topic is we should talk about the last day fulfillment of prophecies of plagues, floods, fires, earthquakes, and pestilence.
this flood in Texas, our daughter and her family have been visiting with us. That was about an hour and a half away from where they live, um, and it's probably one of the most tragic. Um,
In American history.
yeah, I can't think of anything else. We're young children and whole families, and there's still much to find and discover there, just swept away. There's talk of that there was cloud seeding a
Totally.
couple of days before.
Totally.
There's all kinds of things. Whether it was nefarious or just it just happened.
Or
It,
accidental.
or accidental. Yeah, it's just you can't imagine. But we are living in that time period where these things are going to be increasing, and we're living in it right now. I'm convinced.
Scott, let me tell you what I thought of this morning, because this has been weighing on me like an anvil for the last week and a half since it happened. I thought of you and Sue, and I thought of Caitlin and her family, and what you went through watching your sweet little granddaughter for a year and a half go through what she went through and what your entire family went through. Now take 200
Yeah.
of those little girls. It's going to end up being close to 200, 250 people
I
and
know.
in what it seems to be so incomprehensible. It's so overwhelming. You know what psychologists say, that when you experience a death that's close to you, that it's horrific. And if there's two, it's magnified, exponentially. But then beyond that, it almost becomes so incomprehensible that you can't even deal with it. So you just you just have to dismiss it because you cannot comprehend the pain, agony, and suffering that goes on. And I know that that's true for me. I, I've been talking to a guy who's the head of one of the top media companies about Cardio Miracle. He's taking Cardio Miracle. We're talking about one of the major podcast media platforms in the world. When I first talked to him the first day, I looked him up to see a little bit about his background. His house was in Pacific Palisades. He lost his house. And I'm talking to him a couple of weeks ago for the first time. And this guy's as chipper as they come. And I said, I understand you lost your home. He says, yeah, it's been really hard. I thought, well, that's the understatement. He says, we lost everything. I mean, he's 60 years old. He's working for a media company that has $6 billion worth of debt coming up in 2 years that has to be refinanced. I mean, so his company is somewhat at risk. The U.S. economy is at risk. He lost his house, and so he's moving into another one, and just moving into another one. But he handled it so well. I was stunned. But guess what I saw this morning? I saw that there's a proposal from this council who's been working on the LA rezoning that they're thinking of turning all of Pacific Palisades into low-income housing. All of that land being condemned. Does that sound like a conspiracy? Does it sound like a conspiracy that Lahaina
Yeah, I was
got
just going to
burned,
say
that was owned
fires.
by all those old
Yep.
families? Does it sound like a conspiracy that North Carolina had a flood on top of a mountain? That they had water coming from who knows where? And I mean, I've never been in the Narrows. You're a hiker. I'm sure, I do, but I know someone years ago, you probably remember the flood where the Boy Scouts were stranded in the middle of that. I know one of the leaders who watched two of the leaders dive in to save the other, that one to save another one of the leaders, and watched them both drown. And he was the only guy there with the scouts that ended up saving them. I know the guy who was there, and I know what PTSD that's done to him his entire life. It'd be like you watching your two counselors in the bishopric drowned right in front of you while you're sitting there huddled with the deacons, knowing that if you jump in, you're going to drown and leave the deacons alone. That's what he's had to deal with now for 35 years, 40 years. And this comes back, I'm sorry to bring it back to Cardio Miracle, but this is a mission for me. And I just saw statistics, thanks to AI, which has become an interesting friend and research buddy of mine. I just saw statistics last night. 30% greater diagnosis of mental illness in Australia in the last 4 years. A 30% increase in mental illness diagnosis. A 20+% of people go on depression medication. We have a PTSD epidemic in our world because of what went on with this false pandemic and this false conspiratorial experience that now every day, I saw another one again this morning. They're now showing that those who took the injection are losing, if they're under a certain age, they're losing 8 to 12% of their vessel endothelial cells in their optic nerves and in their eyes. 8 to 12%, and it's irrecoverable, according to that. I see the increased statistics on pericarditis and myocarditis. I see the increased statistics on turbo cancers, everything. So we not only have these natural disasters going all over the world that are totally without logic or scientific explanation, other than that somebody's manipulating something and somebody's doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing as a part of either a collapse the economy, take over by the world government, whatever, or the Gadian or Satan's plan. But we're also seeing it with what we experienced in the pandemic. And I know how I feel. I don't know how you would feel. I can bet when I see a 23-year-old person at the grocery store wearing a mask, Still, a mask that isn't an N95 that doesn't do a damn bit of good other than inhibit your oxygen intake. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, what the crap has happened in our world? So I'm
Well, and I
really
think
fired up.
another thing that I've noticed is, and you could say, well, you're just getting older, Palmer, so that's the way life is. But people, friends, family, young people, they're dying. And
They're
it used
dropping
to
dead
be,
still. They're
it
dropping
used to
dead.
be, yeah, it used to be when someone died, it was either a tragic accident or, for the most part, it wasn't unexpected. Now it seems like that's all reversed. It's like these unexplained deaths have just skyrocketed, and and the fewer deaths of friends or family is, more of the explainable. I'm just amazed at people who are just dropping over for whatever reason. It's like they
Their heart stops.
um,
It just stops.
unexpected,
Just
and
stops.
then yeah, I, I I know it's not just because I'm getting older and the people I know are. I know
Are
it's not
younger.
that way.
Right.
So we're dealing
Let's
with a
go.
lot of stuff.
Let's go back. Let's go back because this is a personal thing. Let's go back to the 1980s. And we knew a young guy who was a very prominent church leader in our community who had a young family. He was a hardworking, wonderful Latter-day Saint, and he died. Do you know what I'm talking about? He
I
was
think
shoveling.
so.
He was shoveling
Yeah,
snow.
I know exactly who you're talking
And you
about.
know how old he was? Do you remember how old he was?
I
49.
uh
He was 49 years old,
and it was
and
a shock.
it was a shock to everyone. And his
Yeah,
family never probably recovered. His
yeah.
wife,
I
they lost his business. They lost the building that his business was in. The children were devastated, but he was shoveling snow and he had a cardiovascular family history and he was on blood pressure medication. He wasn't, I mean, he was a little overweight, but he wasn't as overweight as me. I mean, he was not like as fit as you or some of his neighbors, but he was our beloved stake president. He was a great guy. And I still remember saying, how can this be? And I went over as an insurance guy to try to help the family. I tried to help him sell the business, sell the building. It was unbelievable. I'm looking at Facebook yesterday after I'm waiting to get in the sauna, and I see a 23-year-old, newly wedded within 18 months. They're saying, he just died. He
yeah.
just died, and
That's all they say.
the wife is expecting a baby, and he was 23 years old in perfect health as far as they knew, and he died of a heart incident that they were totally blindsided. And I see that over and over and over at a 32-year-old, a 39-year-old, a 45-year-old, but to see it in the 20s is outside of a car accident or some random bizarre freaky brain tumor or something is unconscionable. We see it all the time, and it was predicted that it would happen for years. So I would say to those listening, if you know somebody who did the protocols, and if you know and if you've done any research on the impact of that, if they're not doing everything possible to increase their vitamin D, to increase their nitric oxide, which heals the lining of all the organs, including the main organ of the body, if they're not taking this protocol, they're, I think, at greater risk than they possibly can be. Everyone that's close in my immediate circle that unfortunately did that, who will listen to me, I'm telling them to double, triple, and quadruple dose because they're at risk. And the risk, they say, if you read the stuff I'm reading from, Peter McCullough and Robert Malone and Judy Mikovits and all of these people who are pretty darn smart people, they're all saying that there are many things that they're still, that this spike protein still replicating itself. And that's what happens is when the spike protein is damaging the endothelial lining of the heart and the lungs and whatever, somehow that seems to have a precipitous potential effect on all of a sudden things not working that historically through the years continue to work under normal circumstances. So these are really, really perilous things and horrific. And going back to Texas again, imagine how we would feel as Latter-day Saints if all of a sudden um, we woke up tomorrow morning and there was a fire that came out of nowhere and burned up the entire Heber City girls' camp and all the leaders and all the girls. Imagine how we would feel, how devastated. And yet, even though we feel, I mean, my sweet Janet came to me in tears the other day and she says, John, I just watched 3 videos on the Texas thing. I can't even watch them. She says, I'm just, I can't get my arms around it. I can't even comprehend. I said, we cannot comprehend. We cannot comprehend. But that's why anyone who's discounting their the importance of relying upon the Savior, relying upon faith, um, and being wise and prudent in everything we do, and being grateful for every day, and preparing for the fact that we're going through this major sifting, this major, I mean, if these aren't last day types of scenario, what the crap are? Seeing Pacific Palisades burned down, seeing Paradise City burned down, seeing Lahaina burned down, seeing floods in the middle of, I mean, you can understand a flood in that area of Texas, but not a 30-foot wall of water in 30 minutes. Are you kidding me? It
Yeah.
seems to be scientifically or meteorologically impossible. So it's got to be adversarial driven. It's got to be corruption driven. It may be accidental, but why the crap is it being covered up all the time? If it is, and how in the world did, and maybe somebody set the fire in Pacific Palisades and maybe somebody did it in Paradise, but in Paradise in Northern California, they'd have a house, one house here, not even touched, the house next door, they're melting the cement. And they've never
Yeah, I
seen
know.
cars melt like in Lahaina and stuff. So we're saying, and people say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. Well, guess what, folks? I read an Undared Conspiracy in 1970, and I read the book, and all of it came true by the 90s. And that's why I say that most conspiracy theories are merely facts that are going to play themselves out over the next couple of years. And we've certainly seen that with the pandemic the last couple of years.
Boy, and that for sure. Well, we're getting close to probably wrapping up here.
Sorry.
I have just a little personal story on my knee replacement.
Oh, I'd like to hear it.
So I wasn't able to go to the doctor I was supposed to go at 6 weeks, but the doctor was out of town. And at 6 weeks, they check your flexibility, your flex and your extension. And they just kind of look at the scarring and just kind of double check. They take x-rays to see if everything's still aligned. But I had to wait till about just a little over 7 weeks. And I'd been going to physical therapy between 2 and 3 times a week to get the flex. And they were great. And the scarring is way better than my previous knee replacement that was 8 years ago. It's like,
Oh, wow.
it's like way less. But the interesting thing is I get to the doctor. It's about 7.5 weeks, and I don't know how this compares with a lot of people. I don't know, but he was very impressed, and the flex was fine. The extension was great. The strength in my quad that's really what happens is trying to get that quad strength back because it just atrophies so fast. Anyway, I asked him, I said, well, do you think I need to go to physical therapy? And he said, heck no. He said, go live your life now. He goes, I'll see you in a year. And I don't know how
Wow.
that compares to others, but after 7.5 weeks,
Most of the time it's 12 weeks or more. So yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Good.
I was doing 2 to 3, mostly 3
Servings a
servings of
day.
Cardio Miracle during all that time. This is kind of a dumb question, but I just popped into my head, so I have to ask it.
No dumb
Uh,
questions. It's okay.
if I don't finish my Cardio Miracle and it sits on the counter overnight, does the value of it drop and I drink it the next morning? Should I refrigerate it? Should I not? Is that a legit question? Like what?
It's a great question. It's actually pretty much about 85, 90% efficacious for 48 hours. And
Oh,
refrigerating's probably best, but it doesn't matter if you don't. And the same thing if a person I thought originally, instead of talking about your antacids, I thought you were going to talk about that you found some Cardio Miracle packets that were hard as a rock that had been in your car. And I was going to say that generally it's fine for 2 years, 2 to 3 years.
on the
So
package, that's good to know too. That's good to know
packets,
too.
yeah, packets. And even if the moisture hardens it up, you just could break it up, and and it works just great. But I no the very, very good question. The thing that's interesting, Scott, because I remember, and you're such a hardworking, gung-ho guy, that I know that you were surprised a little, I think, in your first 30 days that it didn't go smoother, because you have had such amazing experience with your ankle and with everything else. And I think probably what happened in your mind is that it was so long ago, 8 years ago, that you endured through what you did, and
That's
your
right.
your determination level was so high at that younger age to get through it, that I think you'd forgotten how bad it
Yeah,
was. And so, because things have gone pretty smooth otherwise with things you've done, I think you thought it'd be a little easier. And I think you were surprised yourself and had maybe a little PTSD about doing it. Let me
yeah.
tell you a funny story. A guy who works with me, I may have shared you with this before. He said that he went in for knee replacement surgery. He's 74, a year older than I am. And doctor says, oh, yeah, you can do this. And the rehab's this and everything else. And he's a Cardio Miracle guy, so he was pretty confident. And after about 3 weeks, he went back to the doctor or whatever, and he says, this was horrible. He says, you made it sound like it was really going to be, that I was going to just breeze through this and everything. He says, why did you tell me that? He said, let me tell you a little secret. If we told people how bad it was, nobody would do it. That's what the orthopedic told my friend. He said, if I'd have told
Yeah,
you the truth, you wouldn't do it. Well, the bottom line is you've seen it. Let me just share a couple of really exciting stories or
perfect.
research. One, the we had a guy who was just on the Praise the Lord PTL, who 8 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, was suffering complete loss of his short-term memory on his way to full-blown dementia and Alzheimer's. He heard about Cardio Miracle on Jim Bakker's show. He went down to the studio to see me, and I wasn't there. I couldn't go. I did it by remote. I did an interview. He talked to one of the sons of Jim Bakker, adopted sons, and they told him to take 6 servings a day for 6 weeks. They told him that. I didn't tell him. They just did that. He went home. Within a week, he started thinking better, but at 6 weeks, he's had a full restoration of his short-term memory. And so he drove back down there this week to go on the show. I don't know when it's going to be broadcast, but his short-term, he called me on the phone. He said, John, he says, my short-term memory is completely returned. He said, and
Oh
it
my
was
God,
gone. And he says,
that's
my wife
awesome.
and I were making plans for where I was going to go into a memory care center. And now, can we claim that that's a medical thing? Well, the reality is, if you go to cardiomiracle.com/studies, cardiomiracle.com/studies is all of our published scientific research, including the one that talks about neurological damage, talks about head injuries, PTSD, brain trauma, preventing Alzheimer's, dementia. We have a published scientific study by the top journal in the world for psychiatry and psychologists that says the ingredients in Cardio Miracle are helpful for those things. So is that kind of pricey at $1.25 a day, or would you rather deal with somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's? I would vote for a couple of dollars a day to help my parents, my grandparents, my spouse, my family members to perhaps avoid that. The other thing is there's a guy named Scott Drummond that you haven't met, but Scott Drummond is an interesting guy. He did a video that had 24 million views on his near-death experience. 24 million, the greatest amount of views ever off of a newly single posted by a guy who posted on YouTube. And you know how valuable that must have been to that guy. It was pretty good. But he posted it, just this interview with Scott Drummond, who we'll have to get on your show. He lives in Orem. He's a wonderful guy. Well, he started on Cardio Miracle 2 weeks ago. He was struck by lightning at 28, and he had a near-death experience being hit on the ski slopes that tore his thumb off, and then the anesthetic was given to him wrong when he was like 20 years old, and he died. And then even after his near-death experience, he was hit by lightning golfing 7 or 8 years later, and both he and the guy next to him both lived, but they were both kind of screwed up. I mean, it knocked them off their feet. The one guy had terrible problems. Scott had problems. He's had ongoing headaches and brain fog for 40 years. For 40 years. He's reported the other day to me in less than a week, the brain fog is gone, and the headaches have diminished by like 3/4 instead of for the first time in 40 years. So that's pretty exciting. And he was hit by lightning. And then the last one is one closer to home. It's my sweet mother-in-law, who's 94 years old. And she, they take their Cardio Miracle about 1 serving a day, and they've been really good. But she ended up having some problems and went in the hospital. Every day she was in the hospital, she got worse. They wouldn't let her take Cardio Miracle. They wouldn't let her do whatever. She eventually moved over into the rehab center. The girls, Janet was down there. They started sneaking in to the rehab center, getting her back on the Cardio Miracle. She went home. Now she's on full dose. And we thought she was going to die 3 weeks ago. We did. We thought it was finally, 94. She's had a great life. But whenever she goes to the doctor, and if she listens to this, I'm sorry, Vera, but it's the truth. When she goes to the doctor or she goes in the hospital, the emergency room, things only get worse. When she's at home drinking or double dosing of Cardio Miracle, her life seems to be a lot better. And so all I'm saying is 1 in 4 people who go in the hospital don't come out. There's a lot of bad things that can happen there. You certainly should go to the emergency room if you suffer a traumatic injury or have a problem. Diagnosis is important, but really what's important is building your immune system, helping your blood flow, oxygenating your blood, getting some sunlight, getting a little bit of movement and exercise, and eating a little bit better. But if you just substitute that $1.25 to $2.50 a day, that extremely expensive regimen to prevent the Alzheimer's, prevent the diabetes, prevent the heart disease, the open heart surgeries, all of the other things, I think it's a pretty darn good investment, and it works for me. And I sometimes forget to take my second and third dose. And when I take it, I'm amped up like this. Now, I'm not like on speed or caffeine, but I'm alert.
Right.
I'm alert and I'm awake and I'm able to function. And we just want people to function, and we would put it out there to your wonderful subscribers, which have been our very best. You, the PTL people, and now your old buddy. Oh, the other thing, your buddy Lance Merrill from the mission field. Lance is off of 3 medications in his first 2 weeks. He and his wife Sherry think that their life has been given back to them, and I mean, he's probably the only guy I know that was more reckless and adventuresome than you over the years. And I mean, he was the oldest hang gliding instructor in America at 70, or in Utah at least. Amazing guy's probably broken every bone in his body, and he's having a total renaissance. And he credits you mentioning it to him. But again, Janet finally came up to me and said, this guy tells some great stories. You ought to listen to him, John. And I did. And we've now become friends. And he refers to you as Luther. And he's one of your, it's really fun to have you guys get together
Yeah.
with us and recently at the cabin for Janet's birthday. But, we're seeing miracles every day. And by darn, we need miracles to offset these catastrophes and these horrific events and the stress
Yeah.
and the depression that goes with it, because we have to stand strong, even though there's death, destruction, and adversarial incidents all around us. We have to gird ourselves up every way we possibly can with faith, faithfulness, exercise, and I believe good supplementation that helps your body fight against all these things. So much for the
Amen.
one-sided diet.
Amen, brother.
Too much dialogue, but it's got lots to catch up on. And thanks for giving me the chance. I love talking about, I don't like talking about the problems, but I do like talking about the answers and trying to understand.
Yeah.
And we are, it has been confirmed. It looks like the second Maha film remedy is going to now come out end of September, maybe October. We're actually going to be featured in that as one of the remedies for the pandemic and the horrific health crisis in America. So that's a great compliment to have that coming out from the Make America Healthy group. So we stand on good ground, and we have a money back guarantee. I don't know why everyone doesn't take advantage of it. And if you think that there's a problem, we'll talk you through it. Or like yourself, if you find the Tums and the Rolaids that was stuck in your truck for the last 3 years, and you say, oh, I guess I haven't been using that. Maybe Cardio Miracles saved me on my Tums bill. That would be great.
Oh, it's so funny. That's so good. I know I heard some kids, children in the background. Those were my grandkids. So they'll be on the video a little bit in the background. I hope you're
Love
okay
it.
with that.
Love it.
They're the ones visiting from Texas. They leave Friday morning, I believe, Friday morning. But it's been great having them. John, this has been a wonderful discussion. We covered so many things. So thank you for your time. Thank you for putting yourself out there and putting forth such a great product. But you're just a good guy too.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been one of the great blessings of our life the last several years is reconnecting and you getting to know Janet, who's a wonderful, and all of the things that we've been able. And just the last thought, Scott, when we hear the children, we hear the crying, we hear the yelling, the fighting, whatever, think right now how many hundreds of people wish they could hear that noise and that crying and that sadness.
I know.
And what we need to do is put our arms around those we love and be grateful, filled with gratitude, and knowing that the Lord's plan is for all, and that even though, people banished in the flood, people have died in wars, there's death and destruction. If you have the right faith and understanding, then they are in a better place than this wicked world that we're now in. But by darn, we need to be filled with compassion and include them in our prayers and our thoughts and our donations and whatever we can to do to help ease up some of this horrific damage that we've seen. And God bless you. You know it firsthand, what you've gone through. And give your sweet daughter Caitlin and her husband a hug for me. And I'm so grateful that Cardio Miracle hopefully has helped them to weather through this terrific and horrible adjustment they've had to make the last year and a half, 2 years. So
God bless. Thanks so much,
all the best.
John.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Well, we'll see you later. We'll talk soon.
To you later.
Thanks so much.
We'll do it
John.
again. Thank you.
Okay,
See you.
bye.
Bye.